Hello, ladies, and welcome to the latest episode of Black Girls Heal. So, this episode is going to be a tiny departure of how we typically do podcast episodes. Today, I'm going to tell you a story. And so, I would love for you to just take a moment wherever you are. If you're doing other things at the time, which of course you are, you're listening to a podcast, but it's a really quick story. If you can just turn your attention to me for a few moments and see if you can see where you may fit in here. The story is called There's a Hole in My Sidewalk by Portia Nelson. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes me a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. The end. So I want you to think about this story. The story of this person, of us walking down a street, there being a hole in the sidewalk, falling in, feeling helpless, feeling lost, and not being our fault that we knew that there was a hole in the sidewalk, and it taking us a while to get out. And then as the story goes on, walking down the street, you know there's a hole now, you pretend you don't see it, but you fall in again. You can't believe that you're here again in the same hole. It's not your fault. It takes you a while to get out. Not as long as the time before because you have done this before, but you get out. Then you walk down the same street again. You see that it's there. You keep walking. At this point, it's a habit. You're fully aware, your eyes are open, you know where you are. This time it is your fault because you are aware. And you get out immediately. And then you walk down the street again. This time you avoid the hole completely. You cross the street, you do something else. And then finally you learn to avoid the street altogether. You know, this story is obviously a really powerful metaphor for where many of us may be at different points of our journeys, depending on different issues. Some of us have already crossed the street on an issue, and some of us are still in the bottom of the hole. Some of us are at the bottom of a hole and we have like pitched a tent. We're like, this is just where I think I'm just supposed to be now. And this is just where I'm going to, curl up and spend the rest of my days. Maybe that hole is called distrust. Maybe you were walking down a street of unhealthy people and the hole was trusting someone that you shouldn't have trusted. And so the hole that you're in is believing that now I know that I cannot trust anybody ever and I'm just going to stay here. I'm just going to make peace with this dark, dank place. And because it's safe here, at least I don't have to worry about falling in any other holes. And yeah, that might be true, but I want you to acknowledge and hear that you are currently making home in the bottom of a hole. And yeah, I guess you could be comfortable living in a ditch, living in this nice little cozy place that you don't have to worry about anybody else putting a hole in front of you, but that's not where you're designed to be. And there's a whole world of possibility and trust, love, and hope that you are separating yourself from. Maybe the hole is self-doubt. Maybe because your fear of failure or your fear of success is so strong that it's more comfortable to doubt yourself versus try. It's more comfortable to plan all the ways something will not work out before you actually do it. And so you as well, you have made peace with just doubting yourself, with hating yourself, with thinking less of yourself. And so that's where you are right now. You're in the bottom of this hole. Maybe you're with a partner who is not available and you're deep in this hole right now. And so this hole isn't necessarily you staying with them, because I've mentioned in a previous episode, I already have materials for women who are single and moving forward. But I've also heard that some of my ladies who are married or in long-term relationships really want to receive some help, and they feel like or they wonder whether or not our programs work. So I'm working on some stuff for ladies who are coupled. And so this isn't for those who are dating casually or even long-term dating someone who there's no ties that you need to leave. Like, you can kind of fill in the blank there. But for those of us who are in marriages and long-term committed partnerships, what your hole may look like is that you're spending so much time trying to get that other person to change and getting your husband to talk to you and be available and meet your needs. You're trying to get your wife to be open or tell you where she's been and tell compliments to you the exact right way for you to feel good enough. And that's your hole. You're waiting, you're at that bottom, waiting for them to give you crumbs. And when it's not enough crumbs, you feel resentful. Or when they do give you the crumbs, it just makes you more satisfied to stay stuck. Versus getting out of the hole would be you learning how to give yourself the things that you're asking of this person. Would be for you to learn how to not be so codependent, as in needing them to be perfect and needing everything else to be perfect for you to feel good enough, but for you to learn how to be interdependent. You know, the other hole that's waiting for you once you get out of this, if you're not careful, is completely disconnecting from your partner altogether because of that resentfulness, that resentment, because they didn't respond to you in the way that you needed. And you have a full family life and kids, and you're blaming them instead of looking in the mirror and looking at yourself and looking to see, have you done the work that you need to do? These are hard questions, right? But they're honest questions, because wherever you go, there you are. The answer is not to leave this relationship. Again, for those of you who are in committed long-term relationships with people who are non-abusive, people who may have communication issues, but there truly is hope and healing. And I'm not there, so I don't know your relationship, but I know that there's access to couples counselors and other people, and hopefully the resources I put out will help you know that. But either way, have you done your own work? No matter where you are right now, have you done your own work to help you heal, to help you be accountable for your side of the street? So that's it for the ladies who are in the holes and just making camp. When you're ready to get out of the hole, you have to find a way out, and you have to make peace with, sometimes it takes forever. Some of you have quit because you're like, man, I'm never going to get out of here. So that's why you're there. But this is something that you've never done before. So yeah, it may take time. Your perfectionistic button that's like, I'm the best at everything, so I should be super quick at healing myself super quick. That's not how it works. And the sooner you accept that healing is a journey and a process versus a line item on your to-do list, the more peace that you're going to have. The more peace that you'll have in the middle of the chaos, because you know that there's an end that is going to come as long as you keep trying. You know, I talk often to the women who listen, who may be in chapter 2, where they pretend they don't see the holes that are in front of them. They pretend that they don't see the glaring red flags, or they say, hey, you know that hole that's coming up down the street? I wonder what's inside of it. I can look at it without falling in. Or you know what? I got a credit card to Home Depot. I got enough cement to come and fill that hole in. I can fix that giant hole that I see, right? So that's either the friend that you've connected to that's a taker, that's codependent, that's flaky and not good enough for you, but you're here to fix her. You have that messiah complex. Of course, obviously, the romantic partner, the person with the broken wing that you're like, you know what? He told me that he has a hard time opening up, but with me, it seems so easy. This is like confirmation that I can actually help him or her. So I'm just going to keep staying around. Meanwhile, you're just slipping sliding down that hole. You make a New Year's resolution to be better about your money and to be better about boundaries. And then you have that friend or that family member that calls with a sob story asking you for help. And you've already helped, quote unquote, with different sob stories before and they've never gotten better. But here you go, just this one last time, pretending that you don't know what's already going to happen, making them promise they're going to pay you back, making them promise that they're going to spend the money on what they told you they're going to spend it on, right? So living in this fantasy that what you know is going to happen because it's happened before won't happen again. You know, the author here says that this isn't your fault. This is hard for me to agree with her, but I do tell the women that I coach and the women that are in my therapy office that it takes a while for you to unlearn the ways that you used to do things and relearn a different way. So in that respect, as you are in this learning cycle, yeah, the shame you feel for doing this all over again, we can put that in a little box and put that on the shelf because it doesn't apply here. But chapter 3, where you walk down the street, you see that hole, you actively see what it is, you see what's coming, and you still take a dive into that hole, just like the story says, at this point it's a habit. Your eyes are open. You know exactly where you are. This is time for you to take some ownership. You know, the way that this may look is when you have access to tools and resources and help and you still decide to try to do it yourself. You don't get any medals for that. You don't get to say, you know, it's hard for me to trust people or change is hard when you're not actively trying to use people around you for support. At this point, you are choosing to live in the misery, to live in the hole. In other words, you can no longer claim ignorance. You know exactly what's up. In fact, at this point, you've probably done something different at least once or twice. Maybe not all the time, but you've changed your pattern to where if you go back, it don't feel the same. There's not as much enjoyment in it. The way that this may look like, and when it comes to self-love and self-worth, is trying to get other people to affirm you. So working really, really hard to get someone to say, I'm proud of you, or thank you, or to acknowledge your achievement instead of you acknowledging it yourself. Trying really hard to get someone to see they're wrong in a situation, to get that apology, even though you know that they're not going to give it to you. On the other extreme, because I think sometimes people will think that boundaries always means cutting people off. Sometimes boundaries means moving towards people. Sometimes we need to have boundaries with ourselves. Sometimes our inner child or our inner wounds will sabotage what we actually need, which is connection. So some of us, our default position is, okay, I need space, I need distance, I need time to work on me, to heal, and then I'll come back and talk to the person when I'm ready. No, sometimes what you need to do is to go to that person while you are hurting and healing, or hurting and needing resolution, and talking with them about your feelings. And because we're at chapter 3, you already know who's an unsafe person and who's a safe person. If you go to an unsafe person and try to share your whole heart and tell them what's going on, you can't be surprised at chapter 3 when they dismiss you, when they make fun of you, where they say you're being too sensitive. You went to the wrong person. I'm talking about those of us who struggle with trust, intimacy, and connection. We are fully aware that this is something we struggle with. and you have homework or you've been tasked, this is what I do with my ladies, to go and talk to someone who is safe and open about your feelings in the moment, and you choose not to do so. That's you pretending that you do not see that you need comfort and connection. See, needing someone to affirm you and validate you and be there for you is not a weakness and is not bad. Where we get into problems with this, because we're human creatures. We are relational creatures. Humans are relational. It's just part of how we are made up. We are built to be in partnership, connection, relationships. Dyad, triad groups, like that's where we thrive. So needing people is not a problem. It is whenever we will put ourselves in harm's way emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, consistently, and deny ourselves and put ourselves in danger in those areas for the hope of being loved by someone who is abusive or neglectful or harmful towards us, is when we go to unsafe sources. And also is when we're so dependent on other people outside of ourselves because we have no sense or connection of our own inner worth. I can know that I'm worthy and also really need and want someone to hug me. I can know that I'm worthy and still really love and enjoy when someone calls me pretty or smart or whatever it may be. Those don't have to be mutually exclusive. They can all go together. But part of our healing process is learning the balance. And then eventually, as you do your healing process, you may walk down the street and avoid it altogether. You may cross the street and then eventually you'll just go down a different path altogether. You've now found another way. So I don't know where everyone is who's listening to this podcast, but I hope it met you at the right place. I hope it's giving you either affirmation that you're doing the right thing, climbing out of the hole, going down a different side of the street. You can have people who are like, hey, why don't you just go this way? Or why don't you hang out with us over here next to this hole? And you're like, no. And they're shaming you and they're making fun of you and they're telling you that you're betraying them. And maybe you just needed someone to say, no, it's good that you're going down a different street right now. Do you? Maybe some of you were at the bottom of that hole and you need to know that you can get out. Or maybe you want to stay in the hole right now, but you just need to know that whenever you're ready, that's possible. Just take an assessment of wherever you are and take what you need and just leave the rest. So that's it for this episode. If you have consistent relationship problems, you can look at my roadmap that I give ladies on how to get out of them, depending on what your relationship problem types are. And the types that I talk about are love addiction, love avoidance, and love anorexia. And so you can get my roadmap by going to blackgirlsheal.org/roadmap. The link will be in the bio for you to go ahead and get started, get your ladder moving to get out of that hole. And if this podcast helped you get moving or feel validated wherever you are, I want you to tag me on Instagram at blackgirlsheal_ and let me know. So that's it for this episode. Love you all. Take care of yourselves.